All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA props betting video. Getting into a quick recap from yesterday. A little bit tilting. We had Devin Booker for over his fantasy score on underdog that ruined a 5-for-5 slip for us. He went 0 for 6 from 3-ball range while having 5 turnovers as well, which that was really the more tilting part. Really, both of those happening, 5 turnovers and going 0 for 3. Just take away 2 turnovers or hit a 3. And this bet ends up hitting. Now, yesterday was a day where we were getting some pretty darn good edges for underdog, which I would say we are again today. Yesterday actually ended up being a solid day overall, 4 for 6 on the PrizePicks bet slip. We did cash a 4 for 4 slip on underdog as well for the Sunday Night Football game. So hopefully we can continue that momentum here today. And so I start off with one of those kind of bigger edges that I think we are getting just in general, whether it's going to be on PrizePicks or underdog, that's really up for you guys to decide. But we're going to start here with this fantasy scoreline for James Harden. 49.5 is what it is on PrizePicks. The average sportsbook line would have it closer to almost 50 there. But we see the underdog line, guys, it is at 46.23. So that line actually ends up being vastly too low. Okay, on top of that, he is someone that does get a good matchup here. I shouldn't say matchup, but he's in a good spot because of how banged up the Clippers are. He should still have that same kind of usage and role that he had, and I do expect him to continue to go off. We see over the last 2 games, which have been similar situations, where tonight, just as an FYI, Kawhi's out, Miller's still out, and Derrick Jones is going to be out as well. And so that should just mean a decent amount of usage there for Harden. The one concern that we have is going to be the lowest score in a game, 220.5 points. And it's also, DVP wise, Philly has been pretty good at stopping opposing guards. So that's part of it. But overall, I think that ends up being a pretty good edge. If you guys want to run out the middle, you can. Again, I like the over a little bit more there on underdog. And then another bet that I like here is going to be LaMelo Ball for over his fantasy score. Again, looking at underdog. Okay, so we are going to notice that this is a bet that actually is somewhat appealing on PrizePicks as well. About a 51.7% likelihood for the over to hit at 38.5. Okay, so underdog's only at 37.95. So not a big difference, 0.5 difference, but that really could end up being the difference between a bet hitting or not hitting. Ball is currently questionable. We do need him to play the 32 projected minutes that he is projected to get. But I do like this matchup here with Toronto. It is an 8.5 point spread, slight blowout risk there. But looking at the game total, guys, very high scoring game, very solid matchup there against Toronto. And so I'm fine getting to that over bet, more so on underdog. And then really one of my favorite bets on the day is actually looking at Giannis to get over his fantasy score here of 57.5. He is currently questionable. I do think we're going to expect him to play in this game, guys. Looking at the underdog line, they have it. I guess they've adjusted it. They had it a little bit higher. They had it at 60 to start. They have since adjusted that. Oh, well, this still ends up seemingly being a pretty good bet. Close game, highest scoring game as well. Pretty solid matchup for him. And if we look at it, guys, in the last game against Cleveland, he was able to go for 80 fantasy points in that game. So that bodes well there for Giannis. And so that's going to be a more bet that I think we end up getting to as well. And then Josh Hart. Josh Hart finds himself in a very good spot, I would say, tonight with the New York Knicks being a little bit banged up. OG is going to be out as well as Jalen Brunson. And so with that, I do like getting to Josh Hart to get his over fantasy score here. Again, kind of looking at underdog, they have their line a little bit higher. It's higher by 2 for a fantasy score. What we don't like is going to be the average projection line there. Oh, well, okay, because all the other data points are kind of telling us to bet the over. But this is very much going to be predicated on those players being injured, because we look at the per 36 production for Josh Hart. He's averaging 10.5 points, 11 rebounds, and 8.3 assists for 37 points per 36. Now, we only have him projected for 32 minutes. I do think that number could end up being a little bit too low. He got 34 minutes in the last game, so we are chasing more of that. I will say this bet as well, if you guys are someone that bets on more traditional sites, I like this bet as well for Josh Hart to get over 15 rebounds and assists. Really crushed it in the last game. And again, per 36 wise, with those 2 players out, his usage one goes up, but also he ends up averaging 11 rebounds and then obviously 8.3 assists. So very appealing there. And then one other bet here as well is going to be with the Detroit versus Indiana game. Azir Thompson to get under his fantasy score of 34.5. Basically a bet that is checking all the boxes here. He is currently questionable, and also worth calling out, guys, Detroit is actually pretty banged up. Okay, Detroit is going to be without Cade Cunningham potentially. Okay, and Thompson himself is currently questionable. The players that are out for sure, Ivy's still out, Sasser out, and Tobias Harris. Okay, so he is someone that should get a little bit, more usage and whatnot if Cade Cunningham ends up sitting. But I do kind of expect Cade Cunningham to play. But this is one where just all the data points are telling us to bet the under, and I would agree with it there. But then I just want to zoom back out and take a peek at some of the bets that I also like while I was going through and doing my research. So we do have Nick Batum to get over 6.5 points and assists. Not a bad bet. Again, the Clippers are kind of banged up. He should get some run here. Been getting 20 or so minutes over the last few games. Haven't projected for 15, so he does need to get that 7 more minutes for him to get that over. But I do think there's a good chance for him to get that over. I don't mind that bet there. Sandro to get under his fantasy score is a bet that I do like. This game, though, is a high scoring game. That's a slight concern. And again, a little bit of a blowout risk. He would actually be someone I think would benefit with some blowout risk. You do see he has been hot recently, but Toronto is now healthy, and so his minutes should start to go down. He was someone that was getting right around 17 or so prior to some of the players being banged up there for Toronto. Jose Alvarado to get under his fantasy score is an interesting one here. I do expect Zion to be active in this game. So Zion has been out for quite some time. He sat out yesterday, which was the front end of a back-to-back. So I kind of expect him to play in this game. And if he does, that's going to take away a lot of usage from Alvarado there as well. So I do agree with this bet. 53% likely for this to hit. That's another bet that I think we can get to there a decent amount. Lonzo Ball over 4.5 assists, not terrible. Okay, Darius Garland is going to be out in this game. We have seen Lonzo get a little bit more run. He's getting right around 22 or so minutes. We haven't projected for 28. Maybe he ends up getting there. If he does get there, that's obviously going to be a bet that we like, and that's probably why some of the data points are telling us to bet the over, but really not a bad bet. Good matchup there. Again, decently high-scoring game against Milwaukee, and we do kind of have a decent little game stack there. If you guys want to run out Lonzo Ball for over 4.5 assists, I already gave you guys that bet there with Giannis, and then we could also look at Ryan Rollins, who in the last game against Cleveland also went off in the spot. And so I look at his 29.5 fantasy score line, and to me, guys, this actually ends up being a little bit too low. Okay, so splits-wise, we can see in his last game, didn't really do much. But other than that, really green across the board. He has been going off. And again, in that last game against Cleveland, we'll type in Cleveland here, 34 minutes in that game, guys, ended up with almost 38 fantasy points. Okay, and he should be someone that, assuming this game stays close, 30 to 34 minutes. And even at the 28 projected minutes that we currently have him at, it's right around there. Like, okay, the DVP adjusted is adjusting for that. Okay, so it is a tough matchup, but already in this matchup, he did get the over. And if you give him, let's say, 5 more minutes, then he probably does end up getting the over with the total projection, which is all data points that goes into that. But again, guys, kind of the only way I'm getting there with Rollins is in a game stack. And then this is actually one of the bets that I like to see popping up. Okay, it only has a 51.6% likelihood to hit. Andrew Nembhard to get over his fantasy score. But again, guys, Indiana is going to be very banged up. Okay, Furphy's out, Jackson's out, Cam Jones is out, Neesmith is out, and Toppin is out. Now, Benedict Mathurin is someone that could potentially be active, which would hurt Nembhard a decent amount. But since Nembhard has returned from injury, guys, he has been consistently getting this over. And even in games that have been a little bit of blowouts, he is still getting a decent amount of run. We've seen him get 31, 27, 30, 30, and 33 minutes recently. And so obviously we'd like that. If he does get us 30 minutes, I do think there's a good chance that he ends up getting this over, and I'm willing to chase that here. I do want to call it this line here for Cade Cunningham as well. If you guys want to bet on him to get over his fantasy score on underdog, I actually think that ends up being a pretty good bet there just in general. 50.5 on PrizePicks at 51.5. This bet has a 51.5% likelihood to hit. The average sportsbook line that we're getting, guys, is actually 54.5. Okay, so good matchup for him if he does get 35 minutes like he's projected to get against the Pacers. Yeah, I do think that would end up being a good matchup. That's if he is active, okay? And worth calling that out there. If you guys like that bet, by all means, I think you could target that. And then I do want to go ahead and get into Jordan Clarkson. I feel like some of the bets that we're getting for Jordan Clarkson do not really make sense. Okay, so for New York, again, they're going to be without Jalen Brunson and OG. And so with that, I do like him to get over his points. I think that ends up being a good spot. We look at in the last game, guys, was able to get to 24 points. And that's kind of what you would expect. He is someone that shoots the basketball a bunch per 36-wise with those two players off the court. And it's a small sample size, don't get me wrong here, but 22 points, 3.4 rebounds, 3.4 assists. And so I like this bet bet. But honestly, if we're just betting on him to have a good game, I don't mind the idea of getting to him for over 21.5 points, rebounds, and assists. Now, obviously, this would not be a bet that you would use on PrizePicks because the under has a 51.4% likelihood to hit. But if you guys are someone that bets on Sleeper or a site like that, that ends up being a better spot, or just more traditional sportsbook bet, that ends up being a better spot for you there. And I kind of like that game in general. I think it's worth calling out. I think you could stat that game, but the bet that I like the most in this game is actually Khalil Ware to get over his fantasy score. The true line is at 32, but if we look at his splits, he's been consistently getting this over with Bam being out. This is a very high scoring game, and it's a close game as well. And so this is one of my favorite bets there, guys. I like getting to that over, especially if you were, again, doing a game stack. I don't like that the data's only giving us a 50% likelihood to hit, though. That's a little bit unfortunate. And then I kind of want to talk about a really interesting bet, I would say, in general, guys, looking at like Brandon Williams. And so what we have seen over the past couple of games, it's either going to be a D'Angelo Russell game or a Brandon Williams game. Okay. Yesterday, he got more minutes, and it was more of a Brandon Williams game. He was able to get his over fantasy score. The previous game was more of a D'Angelo Russell game, so he did not get his over. I kind of like the idea of doing bet slips stacked with that, where we're betting Brandon Williams in some spots and D'Angelo Russell in other spots. Remember, I gave you guys this kind of yesterday, this take with the Spurs yesterday, where if Wemby plays, we have certain bets that we like a little bit more, but if he sits, we're getting some very good edges on some bets. Hopefully you guys took that. I gave you guys a kind of 4-slip bet you could run out in regards to Wemby sitting. Those bets all hit. Okay, this is kind of a similar spot there where I do think it's a good enough stacking opportunity to increase your payout, where we're looking at, again, either way, like, sure, you'll have one slip that sucks. that probably goes 0 for 2, but the other one should go 2 for 2, and then whatever else you pair with it is going to end up being good. So it is worth calling out, guys. Russell did get his over in the last game as well. And this game does have a little bit of a blowout risk. I just think that he is not likely to get as many minutes tonight then. Okay, so I think that ends up being a decent spot to get to. I'd rather do his fantasy score, though, rather than his PRA. And then just one other bet here that I like, guys, and that's actually looking at Cam Christie to get his over fantasy score of 21.5. I'm actually confused about this line. The Dallas Mavericks are still banged up here, guys. Dallas is going to be without Exum, Davis, and obviously Kyrie. Ryan Nembhard could end up sitting, and then Derek Lively is currently questionable. So with that, we have Christie projected to get 31 minutes. It is a game that's a blowout. That would be a concern, but kind of, oh well, he's still getting run or blowout run, so I think we're okay with that. Like 28, 37, 34. Like, he's still going to get enough minutes. And again, looking at the game log, consistently getting this over. So I actually like the over bet here. Vegas sees it a little bit differently. It's basically a 50-50 split there. I'm okay getting to the over. And so let's go ahead and get into some of the generated bet slips that we can be on here, guys. So I do have some bets that don't have a lot of plus EV associated with it. If you guys wanted to just go with that, you can, but I'm looking at some of these other bets where in comparison to underdog, we're getting some good spots. And so I do like these a decent amount. Again, this Alvarado one is solely based off of Zion playing, which I do think he will on the back end of a back-to-back where he sat on the front end. And then this Thompson one is assuming that Cade Cunningham ends up playing. And again, I do like Cade Cunningham to get over his fantasy score on underdog. And then I do want to call it, we are getting a Nikola Jokic free square. So if you guys like any of those bets a lot, you could pair that up with Jokic for his free square. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Appreciate you being here. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel as well. If you guys would like access to that 9to5 Sports PrizePicks Optimizer, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to that tool, plus all the other tools available on the website for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Appreciate you guys being here. Good luck, and as always, let's keep cashing.